And now we'll move on to public hearings.
Item 6A, hold a public hearing regarding an economic development subsidy report pursuant to Government Code Section 53083. Adopt a resolution accepting the report and authorizing the city manager to execute a tax sharing participation agreement with Walmart.com USA LLC.
City manager.
Okay, as I share the screen. Okay, that should be up. So, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the public. Javon Grogan, City Manager. Tonight, this public hearing and action will be jointly presented to you by myself and City Attorney Mark Zaffarano. The action that's requested of the City Council is to accept the report and authorize the City Manager to enter into a tax sharing participation agreement with Walmart.com. So, what is the benefits to this agreement for the city? First, it's important to know it achieves two of our important economic development goals. One for business expansion. Walmart.com is investing in their headquarters here in the city of San Bruno, and business retention. It also improves the city's fiscal sustainability in providing approximately $3.6 million to the city for a 25-year period annually. In addition, it accomplishes the goal of having direct community benefits to the city, really as a reflection of the impacts that business expansion has on our community. The agenda tonight will first provide a background. We'll review the proposed features of the agreement. We will hold the public hearing for the required economic development subsidy report, and then we will be asking the City Council to both accept the report and authorize the City Manager to execute the agreement. A little bit of background on Walmart.com. And so Walmart.com is headquartered in San Bruno. They have been headquartered here since they moved here in 2012. They purchased their facility at 850 Cary Avenue for a total of $121 million in 2014. It is a 271 square foot facility. It employs, here in San Bruno, they employ just over 2,000 employees. They are one of two of our largest employers. And so our two largest employers are YouTube and Walmart.com. Each of them employ approximately 2,000 employees. They own the building and they are currently performing tenant improvements, approximately $20 million of improvements that they are actively underway at the 850 Cary Avenue building. They sell Walmart.com, as we all know, they sell inventory owned by Walmart on various platforms, and that merchandise is shipped throughout the state of California. And through this agreement, we are seeking to designate San Bruno as the point of sale for all online transactions. The result of which is the city of San Bruno will receive our local 1% sales tax when an online transaction occurs and is delivered anywhere in the state of California. And so it's important to note that we will also be receiving that 1%, but our local schools, both county and our local school district, will receive additional revenue as well, because they share in the sales tax allocation. Once again, we talked about this at our prior meeting, but the city receives a 1% allocation for the statewide sales tax that here in San Bruno is 9.75%. Sales tax is our second largest revenue source in the general fund. Our total sales tax revenue in the adopted budget this year is $6.5 million. And so through this agreement, we are increasing that amount by more than 50%, a very significant amount of increase for our second largest general fund revenue source. Our sales tax currently represents 13% of the general fund budget. And as we all know, sales tax is declining this year as a result of COVID-19 and retail store closures. Important to note, I know the council knows this, but in the prior fiscal year, we received $7.9 million in total sales tax revenue to the general fund. And so that is the pre-COVID-19 number, nearly $8 million. This year, the number is $6.5 million. So more than a 1.5% reduction in our sales tax due to COVID-19. And now I will turn the presentation over to Mark Zaffarano, our city attorney, that will provide a little background on the landscape for how sales tax has changed due to court decisions. Mark?
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, you have seen this in some of the subsequent slides before, but just to recap, there were a couple of changes in the law that triggered Walmart's reevaluation of their California operations and e-commerce sales to designate San Bruno as the point of sale. There's a 2018 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, the Wayfair decision is how it's referred to. And then also in 2019, more recently, this California law called the Marketplace Facilitator Act, which refers to online platforms remitting sales tax on sales by remote sellers. So the combination of those two legal decisions and operational decisions by Walmart, they had determined that San Bruno should be designated as the point of sale for Walmart.com transactions. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great. So as we told you last time, the city did review over a dozen other agreements throughout the state of California. They seemed to average about 15 to 19 years in term and about 50% revenue sharing between the city and the business. Next slide, please. The main features of this agreement, as we reported on, there's been no substantive change from the last time, is that the city will receive about 58% overall of the total tax over a 25-year term. And so the total tax is a little over $6 million. The city will receive, you'll see on the next slide, a share that's about 58% of that. This does not affect the Measure G sales tax allocation that comes to the city, irrespective of this particular agreement. And so on the next slide, you see the breakdown of the 6.2 million. Again, the same slide. As you saw last time, with the city receiving 3.625 in the first year and in subsequent years if the amount remains the same. Of course, the amount could go up or down, but the percentage is what it is. And so the agreement is in effect for 25 years, assuming, of course, Walmart stays in the city. Next slide. So we have a couple of actions tonight. The first one is to open the public hearing, take any testimony, and then close the public hearing on this economic development subsidy report. And let me just pause for 1 second and talk to the City Council very briefly about what that report is and why it's included in your staff packet. So the government code does require this type of report, and it also specifies what needs to be in the report. And so the city manager in his presentation has actually touched on all of the aspects of the report that benefit the city and why the economic subsidy for development purposes is important. The report requires that we describe the agreement. We did that. It describes the public purpose for the agreement. The city manager did that very well in his first couple of slides, especially important for the city to revitalize its economy in light of the decline of brick and mortar stores and a variety of other factors, the revitalization of Bay Hill by a variety of businesses. So all of these things are substantial benefits that inure to the city in the agreement. So those are all in the economic development subsidy report that's included in your staff packet. So tonight's actions then, to recap, are to hold a public hearing and then adopt a resolution that staff is recommending to accept the report. And then the same resolution also authorizes the city manager to enter into the participation agreement that's attached to your packet. So that concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. With council's permission, it is a public hearing, so why don't we begin by opening the public hearing and seeing if there's any persons wishing to speak on this item.
I currently don't see any hands raised.
Okay, once we close the public hearing, then therefore we come back to the council for discussion and or action. Any motion in regards to closing the public hearing, please?
So moved.
So moved.
And this, I'm understanding, is still city attorney. We can take a voice vote on this one.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, this is for closing the public hearing. Motion made in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Okay, let's bring it back to council for questions, comments. There we go. Councilmember Medina.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start. This is a big deal, you know. It's definitely having some good news. Couple questions. The consequences of Walmart breaking the agreement, let's say X amount of years from now, for whatever reason, they either choose to move or something. What happens at that?
So I'd be happy to answer that through the chair, Mr. Mayor. So the agreement does contain a provision that we negotiated that prohibits Walmart from soliciting or entering into another similar tax sharing agreement with another locality for up to 5 years. We were mostly concerned that we didn't want a situation where Walmart could leave for the purpose of negotiating a different agreement somewhere else, or there would be at least a disincentive to that. We, of course, understand that any company can decide to leave the city whenever they want. We can't make them stay. But we wanted to make sure that if they do leave, it's not because they're of a better tax sharing agreement somewhere else.
And that's for 5 years. So they're going to be here for 5 years. We can kind of almost count on that.
We certainly hope so.
I mean, optimistically. During the presentation, I heard when the sales are in California. So when Walmart sells across the country, if not the world, I would think. So any sales that were in Nevada, how does that work? That just not included in this state law?
Right. So this agreement covers sales tax that is owed to the state of California.
Okay. And the last question was about the 20 million in improvements. Just curious, what are they doing at the property? That's $20 million of improvements. It seems pretty substantial.
City manager.
Sure. Various tenant improvements on every floor. They appear to be going floor by floor, making changes to office spaces and employee common areas. What I would say is that this work was planned pre-COVID-19, and they're committed to doing that work, and it is still ongoing. So I don't have the full scope of work in front of me, but it is a significant investment in their headquarters that they have been planning for quite some time.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else, council?
Through the chair.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify a point that essentially what we're talking about is a tax break to this company. And I know that's one of those things that gets often criticized by the public for, this is a huge corporation and why should San Bruno agree to a tax break? And so what I wanted to put out there was, or at least clarify, is that Walmart had the option to pay their state tax in any locality of their choice. Their headquarters happens to be here, but they could have picked another headquarters location and said, that's where we want to pay our tax. And so the city does have a vested interest in keeping their headquarters here and keeping their sales based here. And if we were to say, no, we don't want to give you a tax break, they could just as easily say, okay, then we will set up shop elsewhere, and that's where we'll pay our taxes and possibly get a better deal from them. So I wanted to put that out there just because, you know, I've seen some things, some commentary made on social media about, you know, the city and us not making smart decisions and perhaps not giving the deal. But in my opinion, this is a very good deal for the city, and I think that it does make sense for us to go and enter into this contract. And I think Walmart was very generous in picking their location here. I know that they already pay more taxes than they previously used to when they were in Brisbane. And in addition to that, they were willing to negotiate this. And so I wanted to make that statement because I wanted it at least to be on the record that we do understand what we're getting into. And I personally believe that this is a very good deal for the city. So that was it, just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mason, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Davis?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I hope that our city attorney concurs with Michael's comments, because I'm glad he said something, and I'm glad he so eloquently explained that. But I think that's an important thing that for those who are watching or listening should understand.
If I may, through the chair, Mr. Mayor, I do concur. I think there's also one thing that sometimes gets lost in those discussions, and that is that some members of the public might feel that agreements like these are unfair when they're pitting cities against each other, and it's sort of a race to the bottom about who's gonna give them the biggest break. And that's actually not the case here. Walmart.com has been here consistently for 10 years now. And they made it clear in the negotiations that we were, they have a commitment to being in San Bruno, as evidenced by their presence here for a long time. So this is not one of those situations that sometimes garners a lot of public attention because cities are competing against each other to bring in the business. That's not the case here. It was not the situation.
Excellent point, Mark. Thanks.
Councilmember Mason?
Yeah, I would also say that based on the last report that was given, they're actually giving San Bruno more than some of the other city agreements that are similar. So I actually think that the city that's really in need of funds is in a better position now with this agreement once it's signed than it would be before. So I just wanted to say I concur, and I want to see a signed agreement before I get too excited. Thank you.
And just won't repeat, but again, thanks to staff for your efforts and bringing this forward to us this evening. Seeing no other comments from council, this is for a resolution. Any action?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second.
Everybody's
Or
on mute.
whomever.
Okay, we have a motion made in a second. We'll let the city clerk work that one out. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Mason. Aye. Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. City Attorney, is that all that you need on this topic?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is.
Thank you. And thank you again to both of you and City Manager.
You're
All right,
welcome.